The PCB industry is a very important part of the electronics industry. It is a huge industry that includes companies directly involved in some stage of the manufacturing process, such as electronic circuit and PCB layout designers, bare board manufacturers, assembly factories that solder the electronic components on the bare board, prototype shops that manufacture and assemble small quantity of PCBs, companies that do in-house design, manufacture, and assembly, industry standard providers, and their suppliers, such as manufacturers of raw materials, like laminates, copper foils, solder, and electronic components, IT companies that produce specialized CAD and CAM software, specialized or custom-made industrial machine suppliers, chemical companies, waste treatment companies, logistics companies. And because it is a huge industry, it involves a lot of people in lots of different roles. For example, electronic circuit and PCB layout designers, production, test and quality engineers, machine operators and factory workers, sales support and sales engineers, buyers, admin staff, and of course, managers of every title and level possible. This is a highly regulated industry depending on where the PCB is going to be used. The general standards to follow are 9001 Quality Management System, IPC Series of Standards for Electronics Manufacturing, 14001 Environmental Management System, Restriction of Hazardous Substances and REACH EU regulations. For most consumer and industrial electronics applications, there is no need for further action. Additional regulations apply for automotive industry, aerospace industry, healthcare industry, military. So, how does the industry really work? There are very few companies that design, manufacture, and assemble PCBs themselves. In most cases, the PCB is designed on one continent, mass-manufactured and assembled on another, and shipped back or sent to a different destination. For example, let's assume that a company has designed the PCB layout of a 4-layer circuit board used in a washing machine. They do not manufacture themselves, so they outsource the mass manufacturing and assembly stages. This is what usually happens. The first step is to order some sample PCBs to check the general functionality and run the mandatory tests. At this point, they only need a few boards, so their project manager or project buyer contacts a prototype shop and sends them the electronic components needed during assembly. Prototype shops manufacture and assemble high-quality PCBs but are very expensive and do not have mass production capabilities. However, they can be very flexible and adapt the manufacturing processes to produce almost anything. After receiving back their samples, they test them in-house, and if rework is necessary, the new board is manufactured and tested again. Once they are sure of their design, the functional, EMC, and other tests required by regulatory authorities are outsourced to special laboratories or sometimes to the prototype shop that manufactured the samples. When the PCB design gets validated, their buyer sends requests for quotations to bare board mass manufacturers, assembly factories, and component suppliers. And here is where the fun begins. It is always extremely important to consider the production capabilities and limitations of mass manufacturers when routing the PCB. Mass manufacturers cannot always make a PCB the same way the prototype shop did. The design company could also ask mass manufacturers to produce some sample boards for them to test before they place an official order. If the manufacturer accepts, depends always on the money to be made. But this is a very wise company that followed all manufacturers' recommendations. Minor technical objections from the manufacturers are easily resolved, and they receive quotes at reasonable prices. The buyer negotiates the prices with the sales team of each bare board manufacturer, assembly factory, and component supplier, and places purchase orders to his preferred suppliers. With the prices, delivery dates, and transportation terms agreed on, the bare boards are manufactured, tested and shipped to the assembly factory where the components await. The components are soldered onto the bare board, the PCBs are thoroughly tested again and shipped to their destination. If nothing goes wrong, the suppliers become accredited suppliers for this specific PCB design. Next time, they can reorder without passing again through the testing stage. If not, the quality departments of everyone involved work together to find and fix the error, while the sales departments play the blame game.